On this final Chicago Beer Pass of 2019, Nick and I are joined by Chet Brett to talk about Hailstorm and then everything that went down in Chicago brewing this year. Here we are, hitting up events, drinking our way through Chicago beer, and trying not to miss a thing.
Yeah, because, got a cork popped out, boom, it flies like fucking 10 feet. We're like, yeah, let's do it.
All you have to do is add some fruit, stir it up, and ride that milkshake wave.
Whenever I see him, I gotta take a photo with the most decorated brewer in Chicago, Jonathan Cutler.
It'll be like the stuff you hear. You ever go to every time you go to Floyd's, all the music sounds like this. Raw, raw, raw.
Sometimes you want a small beer, but really, you want a big beer.
You gotta take in all those big aromatic hops.
Hey, what are you doing this weekend? Waiting in line for a bottle release?
You should have never been a fad. The black IPA is delicious.
Hey, and welcome to Chicago Beer Pass. I'm Brad Chmielewski.
Brad, what's up, man? I'm Nik White.
And we got a special guest to close out the end of 2019 here.
Oh, man, he needs no introduction. We'll give him one anyway. The one and only Chet Brett is here, man. How are you, sir?
Awesome, thank you. Love to be here.
Yeah. So Chet's making a return visit. I think last time it was a guild event where Chet was here with one Justin Maynard. I think we set the record for a number of minutes for a Beer Pass episode.
I know. I don't even.
Justin and I talking and drinking beer with each other. Sounds like a good formula.
We have a lot to talk about as we kind of wrap up the end of beer in Chicago for this year.
It's been a fun year. I mean, I was looking back on what I did this year, and this was harder than other years to figure out. I'm like, I had to look at photos. I'm like, I don't know what the fuck I did this year.
Get to be my age, you have to do that pretty much every day.
But we have like a crazy offering from Hailstorm here in front of us.
To go through today, sure.
And as we were finishing up this Juke Nukem from Alarmist, but we got the IPA. They got the oat IPA. Man, I've only really had the Vlad series.
Vlad Coconut is a favorite of mine. That's my favorite Vlad. On this side of the table is Night of the Undead. It's a German style Schwarzbier. You don't see too many Schwarzbiers.
Okay. Yeah. And then we got the big Lumberjack, 13%.
Good Lord.
Just every day.
Just no problem. Yeah.
New logo scheme over at the Hailstorm.
Yeah, and the whole thing we always discuss about what the whole evolution of businesses are, and if you have, you're constantly changing and evolving and saying, hey, what would make a better thing? What would be the thing that catches people's attention on the shelf at the binnies or the bottle shops that you go to and say, you know what, that looks great,
Yeah.
Because fortunately, with the reputation of Hailstorm is people know about the beers, but all of a sudden you're like, oh, people don't necessarily know about our brewery. Be like, oh, that catches their attention.
Right.
Let me try that.
Yeah, I remember our guy Josh Riley down in Kankakee. He referred to Hailstorm as the half acre of the South. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? But he started running through all of these styles that they make. And it didn't dawn on me that was true. Like, we're sitting here with Prairie Madness. Prairie Madness took a gold at JBF. The Maibach medal at JBF. Mm-hmm. Then they got these heavy stouts on the other end, fucking Schwarzbiers, IPAs. They do touch a lot of styles.
And unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to swing by the brewery where we just packaged the Hotel Life again, which obviously is a easy drinking lager. I don't know if you guys have had that.
No, I haven't had that one.
And many great parts of the industry is, the enthusiasm that the brewers have on what they're bringing to the table. But when a brewer likes his lagers, like Steve Miller, I don't know if you know Steve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know Steve. I met Steve in the Slapshot days.
Yeah, sure. And of course, Brandon. So they're making some beers that they enjoy too. So it's kind of been fun.
Nice. Was your move this year to Hailstorm? Or was it that?
Yeah, in the last couple of months, I kind of moved over there. I've been doing some different things in the last few months, helping some other breweries try to figure some things out. And then, of course, started 7 years ago with Church Street. So that was kind of nice. And we'll stop by Tribes along the way.
Nice, yeah.
Yeah, that was the first time I heard of Church Street. Was when I met you. Then over in Itasca.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was 7 years ago. Joe and Lisa Greger, Joe was a chemical engineer, and Lisa's like, all right, let's go. And they opened up a brewery and, made some pretty well-known lagers. The Heavenly Hellas got a lot of attention along the way. Mm-hmm. So, the whole industry's evolved. I mean, 7 years, I just stopped by Pipeworks on the way over here.
Okay.
I was talking to Garrett, and I was like, what do you think the number's at, 250? He goes, oh, Danielle, who's the director of the guild, said he he had said she was by, and something like that was the new number for
for the state?
breweries in the state of Illinois,
250.
250. So, 7 years ago, there were maybe 50. I mean,
Right,
Half
yeah.
Acre and some of the guys in the city, and then out in Burbs, it was Solemn Oath and Tighthead and Pig Mines up in.
Yeah, I think we were talking, was it last week or the week before? Like, before that wave, it was just Rams and Rock Bottoms. So it was like, that was
Yeah.
Fobab 1 and 2 kind of
It's
thing.
true. Yeah, 10 years ago. Well, with who is it? Metro and Rev and Haymarket, all either 10 or turning 10. We talked about how many breweries are 10 in the city proper, and you could count them on like
Sure.
one hand. Oh, but then all the oldest breweries are all in the burbs. All the older breweries are all in the suburbs.
And we're talking about Rock Bottom, but Rock Bottom has produced some breweries of some renown in and
Yep.
around Chicago, and then of course across the country too. But Pete Crowley, arguably one of the best one we have.
Haley from Harris, she was at Rock Bottom.
Yeah. Now Ray Gonzalez is the head brewer over there, and Ian has been a staple down in the South Side. I don't know if you know Ian.
Where's he brewing?
He's at one of the Rock Bottoms,
Okay.
Orland maybe.
I forget there's an Orland.
He's medaled at the GABF
Okay.
and quite the brewer. So
250, crazy. It's a lot of beer.
Wow, I can't name 250 breweries. I can't.
Are they-
I don't even think John Bitterman can name
They're not even all in the Beer Miscuous book.
No,
So.
it's also that. Yeah.
Well, what should we start with? Should we go gold winner?
I'm down. Let's do
Go
that.
with the
I haven't
gold.
had that in a while.
we might not be paying attention to the palate much past this.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about the year in beers, so as opposed to, we'd love to push the Hailstorm beer as much as we can.
Yeah. I think-
Actually, I don't know if this will be out by Monday, but I'll be at the Binny's in St. Charles with Christine. She's an awesome beer buyer for Binny's out in St.
cool.
Charles. But she also, keep getting back to the many great things about the industry, but the people who care, who are point people at the locations, the Binny's, the bottle shops, the restaurants, and the bars, who also take time out of their own life to give back to the guild and the brewing community, because for whatever reasons, the lifestyle of working at a Binny's or a bottle shop or a restaurant line up for but they want to be as active as we all are. We're fortunate we get to go and have some fun at the Barrel Warehouse, Fobab and whatnot. But when you see people in the ancillary industries that support us and sell our beers, more power to them, and cheers to those people for us.
They keep this thing bouncing, man.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
We're just here drinking and talking about it. So
Yeah,
I
I
don't,
get a little bit of this. I don't get enough of this. You always try to keep up on the demand on these. So I think we'll try to be a little bit more proactive in 2020, and that's a balance. You have beers like this people always want, and then like the brewers want to make other style beers, and you have to have a little bit of consistency, especially now that it's that thin line. The beer buyers want new, but at the same time they can't take 22 SKUs every
Right.
6 months from every brewery. It's just a battle for shelf space.
Yeah.
and the customers might want new, but they also want beer that they know is good in their fridge too.
And what we identify as consumers and buyers are typically the hardcore craft beer buyer. What we have to think of is, and this has been my mantra from early on, in terms we have to get those big beer, American lager buyers to feel more comfortable to migrate, because there's a certain amount of cannibalizing ourselves in that tight community of
Right.
people that know about Prairie Madness before we talked about it today. And I saw the podcast of you guys breaking it down before it won. That was kind of fun. So
It's overwhelming to the casual consumer if you walk in a place like Benny's and you see 300 brands and you're like, like you said, we're lucky. But if you didn't know, if you haven't been to these places or know the guys that work there, you're like, well, which one's which? How the fuck? What do I know what to get?
Right. Why
it's
is
tough.
one IPA or one New England IPA better than the other one?
and arguably, I've tasted about as a lot of people in Chicagoland, between the beer buyers and all the festivals we've all supported over the years. And it's amazing if you can just break down the initial not anxiety, but the apprehension of somebody to try something. And that's why we encourage people to go to the local breweries and stop in and ask a question. Go, I usually like this, because You know, I talk about sometimes there's a gateway IPA, but I hate IPAs. But if you get some now, especially that the New England hazies, they got all the aroma, all the flavor, but some of that bitterness that people associate as a thing that they can't really embrace. You know, it tastes pretty good.
Those people, man. Those people that still think IPAs are all bitter. Who are you people? You people are shopping at Target. You are the people that Ballast Point, Kings of Comics is hoping.
After?
Yeah, those people.
We better save that for the
Yeah, Prairie Madness is something you can believe in, though. Like $10 or so, 4-packs.
Yeah.
4-pack.
Easy going, always good.
Yeah.
Always available.
Yeah.
You ain't got to fuck around. If you see that, you can always grab it and you'll be happy.
Yeah. Do you think we're gonna see this coming year, like a pushback to some of these styles like that, versus the new haze every day?
Well, if you take out the top X amount percentage on anything of those super attentive beers that everybody's got the attention on, and take a step back and say, well, what's the meat and potatoes part? What's the stuff that's selling? You know, is Half Acre still able to move the Daisy Cutter? Is Rev still moving their anti? Because you want to grow. There's a volume-based thing, and if you keep trying to get everybody's attention, and it's a widget, you know, it's something you got to get a consumer to embrace and buy. But at the same time, you're like, oh, it's got to be tasty. And it's a lot going on.
Only so many beer nerds are gonna line up at Maplewood every day for a release.
There were 200 of them today on Friday
So there's your
at like 11 a.m.
And props to the people who make the props. Bourbon County still gets the people showing up at that Benny's and you know, becomes a party for that part. And that's all going to be part of the culture. And we got to encourage that the best we can. But we got to go a little further into the community of beer consumers and beverage consumers. I mean, you know, the other beverage producers, the wine and this, we're talking about the seltzers and stuff like that. They're trying to grab off, you know, some of that beverage consuming. And our friends at, you know, out in Solomoth, they took a crack at their city water. I don't know if you guys...
We had that on the show.
Did you?
I had a grapefruit one, I think.
Yeah, it's all right. It's
Who else has done that? That's a brewery. That's the first one I've had from a brewery.
Out west, there was a couple of breweries that had done that.
Yeah, we've had the Seek Out from
Who's
Two
that?
Towns, the cidery.
Okay.
And then Virtue's got, you know, the cocktail cider things that are kind of seltzer-like, but...
Yeah. Chad, last time I saw you was actually like last week at, where were we? Oh, we were at Lynx Tap Room.
Mike and Chris out there and all the team out there supporting us. So.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're talking about, I don't know where I was going with that. Oh, like events. Yeah, because it's the end of the year, right? What have been some of the things that you've enjoyed the most? What is the first thing that come to mind is like the fun parties this year?
Well, fortunately, I was able to get out to the Great American Beer Festival this year.
Oh, right on.
Okay.
Some friends from Moore and some other people along the way. And to be able to drink the gold medal that we had won, you know, in the big popular category 2 years before.
Yeah.
I was with the old Irving guys drinking their Beezer right after they won the gold
right.
before it ran out. You know, and that kind of experience, because if you remember a year ago, I crashed you guys' party when you guys were with Alarmist doing their juice. And I was just passing by and I saw that, and I didn't even think it was Monday. Anybody would be there. It was coming back from some event.
There's this large figure coming from the shadows. And we're like, oh, wait, that's Chet Brett.
It's like an old Johnny Carson episode when Dean Martin comes and crashes the party. Like, oh, sorry, I didn't know you guys were running tape. Guess you guys don't run tape. That's
I don't
dated myself.
It was on the
too.
road, so we probably didn't run it on the road. Yeah.
But yeah, the run tape.
That was a lot of fun. And then, you know, the thing is, we could break down so many parts in history microscopically, but like the festival scene, right? And it's a very important part of it. It's sometimes a very important part of certain communities. But there was a little point where there's some fatigue in that.
Yeah.
And so you have to pick and choose, and how are you going to support that, and what's the best way to get the story out, because most breweries don't have the marketing budgets to get out there and, you know, have the girls throwing out the people throwing out swag and stuff like that. So you have to tell, here, taste this delicious beer.
Yeah, you hear from some brewers after a while, they're like, we just don't have time, or we can't afford to give beer to this
And
fest.
that's all the things that have the challenges of owning small businesses like that. But that said, it's one of the few industries that you can get people who will help you and support you.
Yeah.
Now, I was fortunate, the 6 years I was with Church Street, in all of our breweries, we have these communities of people that would support it. This guy, Dennis, I don't know if he's even on this kind of stuff watching. He was a guy that came in from basically day one to the brewery. And so he goes, Chet, it's been 4 or 5 years still being around the brewery. He goes, I want to help and I want to volunteer and I want to pour at this festival. There's actually the Big Beat guys, Ed Shane and Johnny's Ballpark Brew Fest. So I said, you know what? He goes, I'm going to buy a ticket. I'm going to volunteer. I go, listen, if you buy a ticket, I'm not going to let you pour. I go, I will get you in and you will pour for our brewery. So now he's as empowered as anybody he knows his beer, our beer as well as I do. He's pouring beer. All people are coming up. Oh, do you own the brewery? No. I just love that beer. I took one of my days off, and I'm pouring beer. You're like, you know what? That in our community that has, but if you're all of a sudden 60 miles away in Morris in the middle of the summer, Aaron throws it from Honest Abe's. He throws this great festival, but it's in the middle of the summer, in the middle of out in the hot part of the rural prairies of Morris or whatever out that way.
Oh, okay.
And it's tough to get out there.
Morris, Illinois.
Well, don't give up on don't sell more short.
No.
There's
I'm
some consumers out there.
I'm just
They have been
confirming
very
that
supportive
that's.
of craft beer.
I'm just confirming that that's where it is.
Yeah.
I just because Illinois is so big.
Yeah.
We haven't touched all. We haven't touched all of Illinois.
No, we understand there's lots
One
of
day
people.
we'll do a little road trip. I'll take her out.
We know, we joke often how far away some things are, but we know there's lots of people drinking and going to breweries that we don't go to, and the breweries here seem far away. So
That's why. That is why we like. We do the show every week, but we like when guests come on. Because it's like, we need everybody's perspective. It's the scene's too big for one crew to handle. You need to talk to everybody just to know what's going on.
And here's the thing: we have so many friends within an hour.
and we don't
of
work
where
in
we
it.
are.
So.
But I don't know if you guys have. I still have not gone down to Scratch, which of course is this. But it's always 5 hours when you pull it up a MapQuest, or I guess you don't say MapQuest.
That's stiff.
It's 5 hours,
that's a
and it's
stiff
just,
ride,
but when
bud.
you get there, I think they're taking dandelions and making beers. So, I mean, it's
I
probably
did
worth
have
the trip.
a bottle. My uncle went there. He's retired, and he was down there and had some bottles, and so he opened one on Christmas. I was
Oh,
like,
there you go.
all right.
Perfect. Then we celebrate that, right?
Yeah.
You have to consider that you're gonna stay the night if you're going somewhere for 5 hours to drink, right? Like that's how far it is.
I would think
it's
so.
like shit. We're not coming back. We're not coming back today.
Might need another day. You might get lost when you get that far down there.
Yeah. But you're right about that community thing and beer, and it gets overrated. We say that all the time, but
Yeah.
it was fun. That's why that party was fun because every time I look up, I saw someone that I've hung with before, and that was cool. And that's the most people I've ever seen in Link's Taproom. Yeah.
They got a nice turnout. and people have moved around along the way. People that, like for me, had moved a couple spots in the last couple of years. But one of the gals from Rev, Kelly, she's she went to a big boy, and proud of it. Why not? I mean, my grandfather worked for a big brewery. He worked for Schaefer Beer, and he basically was account managing and brand managing and stuff. So it's in my heritage to understand that side of it.
Okay.
Yeah, we did the show from Miller Coors headquarters a
Yeah.
couple years ago with Lisa Zimmer. Yeah.
Are they still doing that stuff where
Oh,
doing a lot of active
party on
stuff
the
in
roof?
I don't think so.
The Brewers Unleashed, it was called.
Yeah,
They would
think.
get busy. Like they would go.
I think Lisa's role changed a little bit. So
Because she was kind of she was the heartbeat of that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're this the end of the decade, and we're thinking now that I'm thinking about decade stuff. I'm like, those parties
Those
on
are
the
pretty
roof
fun,
at
yeah.
Miller
you had a
Coors.
whole nother dimension at the end of the year, not at the end of the decade. We dropped the year. I'm like, oh my.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think of that, 2010, what was that like even?
Yeah. We talked about.
Well, you were saying the Metro Party was one of your favorites from this year, and
Yeah.
they were celebrating 10 years.
They were celebrating 10 years. Metropolitan. I think that was their first big party in this space, right up the road here. You could walk to it. Yeah.
Is that how close that is?
It's super close.
right on the other side
and
of the
if
river.
anybody
Here.
hasn't gotten a chance, it is one of the most beautiful places to have
gorgeous,
a
man.
beer.
I think
If
North
you make it,
America.
and now it's nicer to walk too, and it was like a murder hallway to get there, and then you get there, you're like, oh my god, this is
It's a
like
little
easy.
ways. There's no doubt about it.
It sat in a strip mall, and the whole strip mall was underdeveloped except for Metro.
But
so
that's
when you go,
so. People are thinking of a strip mall like in Niles, where whatever. This is like a
where
old,
Unity is.
Yeah, this is like
Chicago concrete kind of, like boom. But they revitalized that area
Yeah.
now. And
I think there's the coffee guys that they collaborate with.
Metropolitan.
I think are over
Metropolis.
Metropolis is there and Metro's there.
they finished. I think they finished their deck now, and I think the kayaks will be there
And
in the
the
summer.
distillery opening there soon.
Really?
So, yeah.
If they can get those water taxis to come from downtown and park at Metro,
I don't know if
And-
it's deep enough.
the water
It's not.
in the river.
Might not be deep enough in those parts.
Oh,
That's why, like, kayaks are fine. But you don't see a lot of boats. There's, like, low parts.
we can get the city budget to add more water to the north branch of the river.
Dude, they already changed the river once.
get
They're
this
not going to keep changing it every which way you want to go. I'm like, no, go the other way. We're going to support the breweries that need more water.
Get this shit cracking, man. I want to take a boat from downtown to Metro.
So, and then, FOBAB is always a nice tip because
Yeah.
it's nice for us as Illinois brewers to welcome people. Unfortunately, I forget the fellas who were up from South America, and they had come up. And
Really?
you want to make sure that they feel as welcome as we
Yeah.
want to feel if we were in where they were from.
I'll pull up our picks here from the U and see
If it turns up.
see if it all start coming back to me.
Some of your top
22,000.
Well, I can pull it up on mine. It'd take me a long time. But that was great. It's always great. And again, the guild does a great job. And again, the volunteers that are involved in that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's very well executed. It's just awesome.
I think Nick and I were saying one of our favorite days of this year was the Oak Park Microbrew and Big North were on the same day. And so we did both of those, and that was just... Oak Park is an amazing festival on its own. And then to, like, tack on the evening with Big North, it's like, that's fun. Like, it was a fun day.
Yeah, I think
And for you guys, because you know all of us and we're all friends like that, but for people who don't know why events have a particular interest and why they get more attention, the people from the brewery will be there to support that. Pete
Yeah.
Crowley was instrumental for getting us involved in that group, 7 Generations, and they do great
yeah,
work.
I want to say that they co-founded that event, Crowley. and-
Yeah.
And he said this year they made the most or raised the most for.
Yeah.
So
That's
awesome.
true. I didn't know that he was still part of it. He's like, even though it's not officially a guild event anymore, like he's still
He's
involved. in
still,
it.
because his wife's family have a house in Oak Park, right? So, yeah. So he's,
Yeah.
like, very close to the neighborhood there, or the township.
That's an interesting party. We were talking to who was it from Buckle Down? Vicky from Buckle Down, and we kind of commented like, man, it's weird because Oak Park is right next to the city, but all these breweries that were there were all suburban breweries, and it's like if you're in the city hardcore, this is really the closest proximity you'll get to having all these breweries because it's like suburban breweries will go to parties in the suburbs, even if the city's closer to them. So,
Oh, yeah.
right? So we go to Oak Park, and it's technically a burb, so we got access to all these cool breweries that we haven't hit all
Yeah,
year.
it's all
And
come together right in one
and
spot for you.
That was my favorite part of that party.
Yeah, like Metal Monkey. Like
Yeah.
that's
What kind of shape were you when you got to the second event?
Oh, dude, we got after it, man. I think we ended up in a cab.
we took a cab all
So
the
we,
way.
we
so-
mellowed out because that's like a good half-hour cab.
yeah.
I talk about sometimes the festivals. So one day, I walked from my apartment in Glen Ellen to Lombard for the Lombard Beer Festival.
Okay.
Did that for a couple hours. Then took the train to the city and did the West Loop Beer
Oh,
Festival. And then
Parties of the decade, West Loop.
jumped in Brian Kirby, Heartland Beverages van, let's just say, and was thrown out like it was a hostage into the back of that. As dark as the darkest place you've ever been, bouncing around the back. It wasn't much of a asset when I was presenting our beers up in at the zoo, but it was.
You're
it
like,
was a
open
fun
your
day.
mouth. That was that was his beer taste.
Well,
like, open your mouth.
And again, that's why some of these events get the identity of their own. A party like that isn't necessarily the super affectionately known beer geeks community. These are more people that live in Chicago that do active things. They heard about that, and it's a beautiful place to see.
We're talking
And if you get there,
Lombard or
no,
Oak Park?
the zoo, the
Oh.
one the third event of the day, which the Lincoln Park Zoo. It's in
in the summer. Yeah.
Summer
so
zoo one.
You get to that. It's you see the animals still, and it's
Yeah.
pretty fun.
You see more animals at the summer version than the winter one for sure.
Yeah. You're not doing much at the winter
Chump,
one,
what's wrong with
except
these chump animals? Why can't they be out in the winter?
Oh, you went to that one? I've stayed away from that.
Oh, dude, it's
brew light or just brew lights.
brew lights. Yeah. So
This year was, I think, we didn't go, but last year was so cold. it's
Well,
rough.
speaking of so-called,
Once
I
you
don't know if you
experience
guys have ever gotten out to the Naperville Winterfest.
Haven't been to that one
You know,
yet.
Josh from Lou Dog does great beer fest throughout the year, and I always thought it was going to be great when we had our own Illinois one outside. One of the days it was so cold the jockey boxes were actually freezing. You had to take them into the cars and warm them up and hold them up next to the fire. So it can be pretty cold. But
Yeah.
actually, which brings up pretty much the first event in the year in the city is Rock Bottom in River North. They have their Polar Beer Fest, which
You've
is
been to that one.
awesome.
I haven't been in maybe like 8 years or so.
Yeah.
And
but
they
it's-
have all these big beers because it's outside and it's
Yeah.
cold. And but they have a little oasis downstairs.
Yeah,
where they
you
have
can
some
come
other
up and
beers
down
up
a
and
little
down.
bit.
But you embrace it and you're like, all right, there's pretty good stuff.
That's
right
a
there.
cool fest. Yeah.
Yeah,
is pretty
because they got the upstairs beer garden kind of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of nice. And you know, Rock Bottom does a great job. The whole organization, and they get all the people's support. So
I
you
think-
get it's another festival. It's actually one of the best because you get all the people from all the breweries to help represent, but they're not bogged down by having a pour because they have all reps from Rock Bottom pour. So everybody's mingling amongst
Right.
you know, everybody else who's there. So
I think that's the first FOBAB location too, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's what they.
Might have been the first one. Might have been the like basement of. It might have been that, right?
Yeah, it might-
But-
yeah,
or it
'cause
might have been
Craig-
Pete Crowley's like garage.
Or it might have been. It's either
At
either
Rock-
Rock Bottom or Pete Crowley's garage. Yeah, and we brought up two events. I want to say Lombard and Naperville. And yeah, shout out to Josh Segal, man. I mean, he's like the crown prince of the beer festival,
Yeah,
right?
it-
Like he does like
it's-
30 of these things a year. You know?
yeah, and I think you know he's got a good team in place, and his team have moved on and done other parts inside the industry. So
And you have Brewers Eve is coming up here, and that's fun. We've gone to that a few times, but
That's a good one. It was a Savage one. Now it's at Artifacts
yeah.
I've actually gone to a wedding with buddy's wonderful daughter. They got
at
married.
the Savage one, or the other
See
one,
it,
the
the
Artifacts.
Artifacts.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I feel like those are cousin locations. They feel a lot alike. Those two places. Yeah.
what's going on next with the beers?
Oh, I
fellas?
opened up the oat IPA.
Yeah,
That one's nice. It's got more of a fruit, like a tangerine or papaya kind of taste to it off of the IPA there. But I'm digging it.
Yeah, man. So, where do we go? We talked about Metro. We talked about that in the winter. And then right after that, I think we went to.
Well, then we also had a fest of District Brew Yards opening after Bug. Or they had their unofficial after party there, which was they
beer
opened.
under glass, man.
anything post any festival is always a challenge, but post beer in the glass,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, I was a wreck that day. I think it was the first day of the sidewalk seating at Goose Fulton was that day.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I think we kind of blew off work. So you're at Goose from noon, and then Bug at 5, and then
Yeah.
Brew Yards at whatever.
Because
Yeah.
District Brew Yards opened up like the week right before Craft Beer Week started. So they had their like party there.
and that's the thing. You throw 1,000 things around about what goes on, but it brings people every year into this beautiful facility. I mean, before there were 4K, 8K TVs, if you wanted to see what it was like to be in the desert and you lived in Chicago, you could jump on the L, go out to this place, Garfield Park Conservatory, and you have these rooms. There's a place that looks like a jungle. There's a place that's like arid, like this. And
Yeah,
now all of a sudden you let all these
Drunken.
I was going to say beer professionals
drunk
and
fucks.
consumers into their backyard and let us play for a day. And it's been awesome. And it started off as a still a fundraiser. But when they had hail damage, and if you know,
Yeah.
that's a greenhouse building that's got hail, and we have a brewery called Hailstorm. So I very much appreciate what the damage hail can do. So
Yeah, that was that's if I'm just picking one party for Chicago. I mean, obviously FOBAB is like our most revered party, but not like my favorite party is Beer in a Glass. It's the only time we get that far west in the city for a party, and
Sure.
then it's on the National Register of Historic Landmarks. This place and all these different climate rooms, like you said, it's a really gorgeous theme.
and climate rooms on the inside and climate rooms on the outside because it's early spring, and so the weather has been, and sometimes a little bit of challenge.
This
There's
year
been-
was really nice. It was good. In years past.
It's been a little chilly in years past. It's been a little rainy in
rain,
years past and whatnot. But that's the beauty of it. I mean, the people, wish there could be a better day. Well, who's supposed to say what day the weather's supposed to be when you're at some place that's just whatever? Everyone's like, no, it's not. Every day is not supposed to be. I live in Southern California. People go, oh, you must love the weather. I go, well, if you like the fact that it doesn't rain every day, California's great. But if you don't mind a good hailstorm or a good rainstorm or some of these other things, and you get the energy of the world out there, be like, yeah, that was all right. Because people have to survive. They'll be in a little chilly drinking beer and then jumping on the trains to go to after parties at the brew yards, which I guess you guys have touched on what that whole operation is. Huh?
That might have been the best brewery opening
this year
of 2019.
Yeah,
was brew yards.
I think in Chicago.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it stands out. 4 breweries now.
Yeah, really cool. Like, it's a modern beer hall, essentially, right? Pour your own damn beer. Stations along the walls. Big, pretty brew hall in the middle.
Yeah.
That place works. They sell barbecue, right? It's like a barbecue truck.
Lots of beer to go.
Yeah. And then you roll in and you charge when you right away, and then you walk out. So if you're in a group, it's easier to check out. Then you can walk right to United Center. Yeah, It's right on the edge of the brewing district. Okay. And it kind of... I didn't realize that it filled a gap in the travels. Because if you're in the West Loop, right, if you're at Ballast Point, there's nothing in between. Before you hit Chicago Brewing District, there's nothing in between. There's like a mile and a half where it's kind of dry.
Yeah. You could stop off at see Pat and Callie at the Kaiser Tiger just to break up the trip. So I'm just saying to break up the trip.
And you got Cruz Blanca there.
And you got Cruz Blanca.
Well, but that's a little closer towards.
That's for a little further south.
Ballast Point.
A little further south.
Right outside of Ballast Point.
So this kind of bridges a gap between I guess West Town, where Forbidden Root is, and Brewing District, and right in the middle of those two, and West Loop is 4 breweries.
Yeah, and then you had on the other side, Midwest Coast open on the other end of that.
Have you guys ever stopped by to IBW?
What's it called?
Illuminated Brew
No,
Works
I haven't.
Those guys
we heard they do these bonfires.
Yeah, that's what we got to do a lot. You know what? We'll put that together. Be like, oh my God, that would be a rocking.
I saw
It'll
that.
be like we should come up with an event for that, where it would be like bring people over in the middle of that rage, because I have missed it, but I keep
because they don't have a tap room, and they have these invite only
it
barn.
It might be the hardest brewery to get into, because the address gives you into whatever if you Google it, you'd see what the address is. There's it's as old a building you would think that's still standing erect in the city. There's no button that says ring this. So then you got to go back to the back of the building where there's an entrance, but there's no entrance. You go out past the railroad thing, through under a tunnel, into the back, and then you park, and then you're like, which building is it? And then you do it.
I've never been.
No.
Yeah, it's just worth the trip. We'll put that together.
I saw their lawyer at some party, and he's like, I told them they got to quit doing those damn bonfires.
Yeah, that's why I can't there's so much you can listen to for the lawyers, because part of the culture what people are signing on for,
Yeah.
Up in Rogers Park, they're a huge sponsor of. There's a record shop that does like a block party every quarter, the quarterly tastings, and one of the biggest partiers there is Illuminated. So that's why I have their stuff all the time. This year was the first year I think we hit the beach party for Friday Night Flights.
Oh yeah,
that was a good.
Friday Night Flights was rolling this year. They did a good job with that. Like I feel like. Had a good group. They were different every time. It brought in a lot of new people into the
and again, that's part of it. I mean, Katie and Danielle, the work they do with the guild, and working with the city, and working with all these people that have vested interest in making the Chicago experience vital. And I haven't made it out in the burbs, and a lot of other things going on Friday night, but the response we're seeing, again, getting back to what I started about earlier in the thing, about getting those consumers that aren't necessarily craft-centric to break down the airs and say, you know what? There are some accessible beers from these breweries.
And
it's such a setting.
The beach one, I heard people asking, like, where are you guys at? Like, off, like, open outcry. People are like, wait, where are you guys? And, like, people learning about breweries that were kind of in the area, which is good. Like, that's good.
You can walk through. It's on a public beach. You can walk through if you don't have a ticket. And then,
the waterfront, the river walk, I think has.
You can actually, you can engage people. Because, we're in this bubble. Miller, Bud, Coors, 70% of all beer sold. We lose sight of that all the time because of where we sit. But that's the fact. So other people drinking craft, it needs to be a focus. Even it sounds weird to say that out loud because we don't drink those beers necessarily all the time. But it's still true.
I'm not a number guy, so again, the Brewers Association, which is our national clearinghouse of information and lobbying and education, staff economist Dr. Bart Watson is
He's
smart
a
guy.
he's a good follow.
He's a good follow
on Twitter,
and he's a great guy and become a friend over the years. I don't know, I forget how many years ago, the marching orders for the craft beer industry was to get to 20% by the year 2020. Well, we're a week away, and we're not by 20% of the beer market. But what happened from when he first, or the Brewers, Bob Peace and the crew came up with this kind of idea, we'll shoot for that, the takeovers happened. You know, Lagunitas took over and was bought by Heineken, and, of course, the Ballast Point story. And,
That's true. So there's a lot more.
So as we're getting bigger market share, went from 12 to 13 to 14. I forget what the peak was, but then the big guys were taken off the top, and that takes a lot of little breweries to make up for that 1 million barrels that Lagunitas was.
So there's more people drinking craft
exactly.
brands.
And for me, I'm not as so caught up in that, except when you're trying to break it down numbers wise.
Yeah, those numbers are weird because that's a trade organization, right? Yeah, and that's a weird dynamic because how do you account for who's drinking what when you have these rules? It's so annoying.
And you
right?
got to keep changing the rules because, for example, Jim Cook and the work he's done for craft beer in the United States is legendary. But his organization started doing products that by itself was getting pushed out of the organization that he helped flourish. You know, he had that cider,
Angry Orchard.
Angry Orchard.
Oh, yeah.
And then what is it? The Truly is their carbonated seltzer. And so these things, are you going to hold it against him because he's flourishing in non-traditional barrel, barley-based beer products? Which, talking about the beer review, what'd you guys think of those guys getting together with Sam Calagione and the crew over at Dogfish Head?
I think it makes sense. I feel like Dogfish Head sort of lost their allure in the last few years. Like as everyone started the pastry stouts and crazy things, Dogfish Head seemed less crazy, like their off-center thing. So I think it made sense as we can do this together. We have this core group of people that like our product, but we're sort of not innovating enough to be.
You're starting to see people join forces. The place is so crowded. Like those two join forces. Who else? Well, yeah, the Heineken thing was all about hey, I need to sell beer in other countries, and I guess the New Belgium thing was kind of like that too. Like, hey man, how do we sell beer in places that we aren't? That has to be a focus. Even who was it on another end of it? There's a crew in Milwaukee, or they're in Wisconsin. Their contract brewery, Untitled Art brews up there, and the name's escaping me. Oh, Octopi. Octopi built
is
Microphones brewed up there a couple times.
Okay.
Yeah. And Octopi's like, hey, we're gonna build this 70,000 square foot space. They post a brewmaster from Goose Island, and then they come out with this release saying,
Excuse me for a second.
Yeah.
Let's just not use the word poached.
Poached? Like an egg. They
no, they got a great opportunity when we're making $35,000 a year. We're going to eat that 80 hours a week.
And the point of you bringing it up is they're saying, yeah, we got this new space and we're gonna make cocktails, we're gonna make seltzer, we're gonna make root beer. The idea that you are just a brewery is you got to join forces with somebody or make other things because the space is so crowded. Yeah.
Yeah, on the Dogfish thing, I did have the low-cal Dogfish Head, and I think that's part of probably Sam Adams' kind of push, because you would never see that from Dogfish Head prior to that.
Especially if anybody's ever had
120 minutes.
120 minutes. And even the 90s a handful, but that's 120.
So then you have a whatever their solo or low cal thing is. It's fine, but it says IPA, and someone's like, oh, it's not a hoppy IPA. It's like, well, it's a light beer, but that's a Sam Adams beer and not a Dogfish Head beer.
But they and that's the thing, you know, what corporate culture is going to lead going through, you know, and being the identity of it, you know. Again, we'll get to the Kings and Comets later, but I don't think they're going to be putting their corporate monikers on the corporate culture of, you know. Although did you guys see the
Rich ass, they're so rich.
But the post that they had where they showed the picture of the Ballast Point Brewery on the water. And they had 2 Boston Whaler boats that were completely tricked out as Ballast Point boats. Oh. And I think they said something like, and it came with a couple of boats, too. It's like, you know.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, Ballast Point sold for, they're $1 billion, and then they sold for probably like 15 to 40 mil.
I thought it was, I heard 70 now. 60, 70?
Well, the number was like, was it 10 cents on the dollar? People were like, I don't think it was 10 cents on the dollar.
That's an insane evaluation, but we see those evaluations in we see those in IT,
and that's why
in tech. We see them in tech all the time. Those crazy evaluations.
And certain things about the beer industry, sometimes it goes into such a hardcore number, and you're like, "There's no way on this amount, making $1 a case when you're selling cans of beer, that you can multiply that thing based on the amount of 480,000 barrels or whatever they were at that point, where that number got up to that." And somebody goes, "Whoa, who came up with that number?" And then all of a sudden, they're like, all right, we'll move off of that number. You're like, what about all that money that was in that part of it, you know?
Constellation's got issues, though. Like we were talking about the Canadian cannabis producer.
Yeah,
they paid $4 billion for, and then they immediately start complaining that they're not making money off of it. Like, you dropped $4 billion on that.
Someone thought things were going to work out. And
Constellation's got its own issues.
Somebody got fired over there in the last couple of years, I'm sure.
Argus turned 10 this year, so they did a party on a boat. It's that stationary boat that doesn't move. It's the.
Is that really a boat?
It's technically a boat. It just doesn't.
Was it surrounded by water?
It's surrounded by water.
Could you gamble on it?
Surrounded by water, you can gamble on it. So it's a boat.
Well, they've got a great history, right? I mean, stuff that they've gone through in 10 years.
Yeah, they Five Rabbit started there. Baderbrau started there. I think when Baderbrau started, there were no breweries in town that would brew Baderbrau because all the breweries 10 years ago were all at capacity.
Yeah.
They were like either at capacity or just weren't interested in doing contract brewing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's how Argus got in that.
Ted Furman won another gold medal this year for his beer that he's been brewing there under their
Golden Prairie.
Golden Prairie. I've teased that we want to do Golden Prairie Madness, a collab with me and him. So I've run it by the brewers. So it would be an awesome one. And I just couldn't figure out who would take the lead on a.
It's one of those moments too that kind of shifts a little attention for a second off of breweries that just sit, I don't know, either in West Loop or Ravenswood, right? You shift the attention. You have these moments that shift attention to other parts of the Chicagoland area, which is also kind of
cool. And again, all the categories that craft beer can check off, but I mean, repurposing a historical building like that, I mean.
It's a cool old building. Like walking through there, you're just like, wait, this is still safe? But it's like so much
structurally, like, is this okay? Because it's one thing to have, like, I was in Upland. One of their number 2 brand is a brand it's a historical brand that they just started making again. Some corn lager, whatever it was. Okay. But it's one thing to have a historical recipe, and it's another thing to resurrect a building. and then win medals with a guy who's been brewing since the 90s that comes in 10 years after you restored the building. That's a different layer. But that's Chicago. Chicago reinvents.
And again, that was another because they were there for 10 years. Brewers have been coming out of that place. I mean, Byron's still there, but Matt Volker, with Tribes, who had gone on to Revolution in the meantime, was out of that same pedigree. And again, it's all that, same great minds sharing each other's great beers.
Nice. Yeah. What else you got on the list there, Nick?
What else did we do this year, Brad? Did the Mousetrap open this year?
No, that was 2 years ago, right?
Still
3 years ago.
Pilot Project opened this year.
Yeah, which we're still a little confused on what's happening there, which we got to get over and find out more about that.
I went to Rev Oktoberfest. I think you went to 312 Block Party.
Yeah. And the Block Party was run maybe the best I've seen it in years past, so that's good.
Yeah. Oktoberfest got rained out. I did appreciate that it was a full block party, with all the like 5 or 6 beers, and they were really getting us excited about the Deep Woods series that was coming up. They were pouring some of it, and then they would tell you about everything that came out.
Nice.
Yeah, 2019 was a little bit of a blur. Brad, I'm not gonna lie
I think
to you,
we
bud.
drank quite a bit. There was so much new beer coming out that it was at times getting hard to keep track of stuff.
Man, shout out to Crystal Lake, man. That's one of the coolest things I've done this year. Was
Gonna go out there.
make the trek up to Crystal Lake for their
Boat,
I think it's
Boat
called
House.
the Boathouse Reserve Series. It's like their barrel age release.
You just got to think for boats.
Dude, boats and hoes. I have a boats and hoes dance. It's my favorite dance. It was cool though. It was like that's when they were dropping all these names. That's when I talked about 90s breweries. It was like they were saying their brewmaster used to brew at Emmett's.
Ryan?
Yeah, Ryan Coolidge.
Ryan. Yeah, he's awesome, dude.
And then they were talking about all these breweries that existed in the 90s that I had never heard of. And and yeah, it was fun. And they're like they're the 12th largest brewery by volume in the state.
Well,
McHenry County, man, they drink a lot.
he hit the ground running too, because when at the time I was out at Church Street, and we were all over the state, fortunately, and was hustling around, and I would be down in Peoria, and I'd see Crystal Lake. I'm like, how they been over there? I know where I am. I'm like, I'm out here hustling. Who's keeping an eye on these guys way down here? But you make great liquid. That's a big part of the story. I mean. Ryan's, he's been able to crank it out, so that helps.
Yeah, that was my first find of that. I was like, this is good. Someone else must be. I thought it was one of the big boys making it. It was that good. I was like, this is like a cover name. But yeah, it's.
yeah, the branding's right, then the beer's good.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's all you need.
What? Let's get into.
Hey, what's going on here? What's going on here, Chet Brett?
I saw our friends over at Pipe
Pipeworks
Works on the way over here, and Garrett and the guys, and Joe and Scott. All the team over there.
So, Chet,
so I have no idea what we have here, so we'll have to.
Your decade started at Church Street in
Yeah,
beer?
in like 2012, I think I moved out here to Chicagoland and walked in the doors at Church Street, and wish you could walk in and tell that guy, "Oh, go in." No, I love those. Anyway, Church was awesome. Tribe's been awesome, and obviously now being with Hailstorm. But the industry, I've done a lot of things, and it's a long story, but ever tell you about working on Dick in the Box?
Dick in the Box, like the Justin Timberlake
Yeah,
Saturday Night Live skit?
Yeah.
What?
It's
What are we talking about?
It's one of my best stories. We'll have to leave her as a cliffhanger for come stop me at one of the events. So they got the Pilsner.
Go for a Pilsner.
Yeah, Pilsner
But
sounds good.
I was fortunate. I just was back by there the other day with my family back in New York. A lot of my siblings and nieces and nephews and family members. So I worked at NBC doing props. And, NBC in New York is at 30 Rock, right next to the Christmas tree. And
Yeah,
Hey, this is a
all the other
dark
parts.
Pilsner. What?
I don't know what
that's
they
the
got
Bach
going
right
on.
there, bud.
Yeah.
they
Oh,
put it
that's
in
the
the
Bach. I was like, what?
And so I was working in props
It's an
at NBC.
evening Pilsner.
Yeah.
Props at NBC, sorry.
Anyway, so I was working at props at NBC, and that came across our desk. And when you live in New York City and you work in a union, and the first question is, well, he's wearing it. Isn't that wardrobe? Instead of trying to figure it out. Well, by the time we shot the skit, they shot the skit inside the studio. I was outside props, so I couldn't touch anything.
Yeah.
Because it was inside the studio. I had the key to the outside props room, so I couldn't do anything until the night was over. So the cash register is ringing on my hourly pay, golden time, missed meals, all that other stuff. And Justin Timberlake is on. They were shooting at the Conan studio.
Yeah.
With nobody in the audience. He was as funny at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, oh, that's another hour. You know what I mean? Like, oh, yeah, go to 3:01. That is great. Then all of a sudden, and the skit, opened the door, they pushed the stuff in and closed it. I absolutely did nothing for that, but it was a pretty good payday in the industry.
Step 1, you cut a hole in the box. Step 2, you put your junk in that box. Step 3, you make her open the box, Brad. And that's how you do it.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good Christmas end of the year story. But yeah, so it's like that kind of stuff I've done in my life. You're like, oh yeah, it was kind of a fun afternoon.
Straight up 90s. That's a 90s callback right there. That that video. That was fun.
Is that right? Is that?
I mean, no, the sketch,
Yeah.
the
The
sketch.
outfits they were wearing
Yeah,
were,
and then they made a song in like the
Yeah.
vein of like some early
Okay.
'90s R&B,
and
like some
that
Color Me
guy,
Badd or some
Justin
shit.
Timberlake, is his talent. I mean, he's like a Renaissance man. It's
Yeah.
like, not that anybody has surprised to hear that. Oh yeah,
Funny,
Will
man.
Turner makes great beer. Really?
You don't say. That's one of my favorite stories of the whole decade.
Of
was-
Chicago.
Of Chicago was like we used to take that old Chicago Brew bus, and the first stop was always Goose Clybourne.
Was that the Kevin Salvi?
Oh, dude, it was a fucking.
Props to Kev.
It was
A lot
It
of
was a
rage
wreck,
on
man.
that
It was a
list.
dive bar on wheels, man. It
Yeah.
was fun. It was fun.
Dive bar.
I'm like, dude, every Saturday morning, I'm like, dude, we're going to fucking jail today on this fucking bus. This bus is a mess, but it was fun.
was like-
It was fun because we never because
You guys had a lot of fun.
oh, but Goose, the manager at Goose Clybourne, we're talking about
Will Turner.
Will Turner. Oh, every time all the employees, every time they swipe in, the card reader says Will Turner is the coolest
Oh, nice.
because he's their longest tenured brewer at that location. Will Turner. Yeah.
If
So-
people don't know, just Google or just try to go into a brewery of any renown and ask about Will Turner. He's just one of the greatest guys and one of the best brewers in the country, actually. And I'm proud to call him my friend. And I was fortunate. I was fortunate to be on the board of directors for the guild for a little bit. And it's a group of people that give their time towards the group of people that represent all the breweries. And it's like stuff that I'm not good at. I knew that I had Will Turner to take care of that. You know, I mean, he has so much information and knowledge and experiences that when groups need to have people in place to cover the things that are important, that is about as good as it gets.
That's true, yeah. One nice people.
No, he was
and
supposed-
Deb, too. Like, they're
Yeah,
both.
shout out to Dad, man.
And he's now down at Open Outcry with John
Right.
Brand down there on the south side representing.
Amazing space. Like, that space is just nice, and it feels welcoming.
Have you got a chance to talk to John at all or no?
No.
John.
John Brand, he's the guy who opened it up, and he was a trader on the wherever you would use the expression "open outcry" or whatever. He was one of those guys early on that latched on. He tells a story that nobody else would let him latch on, and I was like, oh, I could use a smart guy that's industrious who wants to help out around a brewery. And he picked my brain for years, and then put all the places in place, and he started dismantling a barn somewhere, plank by plank, knowing I don't know if he had even bought the building, but he was working so far ahead. You do all that stuff, and you got the snow globes on the roof last year for the winter and all that other stuff. But he got Will Turner. I mean, forget about all that other cosmetic stuff. He's got one of the best brewers in the country, brewing his beers. So
I made it up there once this year. It's a little bit of a trek for myself to get over there. So I'm like,
well, not everybody's in the confines of
Yeah,
Chicago.
I got like
There's
3
some
miles.
people in Chicago.
I got about it.
I used to peg Brad. I'd be like, Brad, lives in Wicker Park, and if he can't ride his bike to it, he's not fucking going. But then you look up, he'll surprise you. You look up
Well, you
and
can
Brad,
take your bike on the trains in a lot
That's true,
of
yeah.
cases.
like Brad's like, yeah, I was at fucking Ravinia this weekend. I'm like, oh. So I'm done.
I
I'm
biked
done.
there,
I'm
though.
done pegging Brad. Like,
And we're both inviting you down to Hailstorm. But he has to go down there anyway.
I know,
So
yeah.
we'd love to
Yeah.
have you guys come down and visit us down there along the way too. So
yeah, man. What were we talking about?
What this
the
year?
rest of the year.
Yeah, yeah.
And would speak not to get to the end of the story, but after I leave here, I don't know if you guys are going to be able to get over there. Fishman's is closing up. It was like as current as today's headline. I mean,
Yeah, this sucks, man. So Fishman's 2000 since Fishman's the bar that was down the street. This is the reboot
Yeah.
because they were down the street, and then that bar was like 20. That was a 20-year-old. That was an old man bar. It was a slashy, right? Liquor store next to the bar, and it was Shane and Gus that came in, and slowly they kept some of the old macro lines on, but it became a Chicago-centric craft bar,
sure.
right? And really one of the best in the city. Kind
Yeah,
of.
with aligns with Map Room and Hop Leaf and
Yeah,
people.
no, it really did, and it was the first time that
Yes.
they would throw parties, and the first time I ever saw Spiteful 18th Street and Pipeworks all at one party was at a Fishman's party. They would throw these parties in the back lot there.
Okay.
Yeah, but they were yeah, man, they were
Moved
they
into the new spot.
yeah they were
The bottle
naked.
shop, unfortunately, was short-lived there, and they try to hold on as just a tap or just as a bar. And I guess the economics, which goes to getting back to supporting the local people. You know, go into the bar, go into the restaurant, go, hey, what do you have that's local? What do you got going on? Because we're all, it's anything else. We're out there hustling, trying to get it. But if you're not getting the people out there to support, it's like, oh, what's going on here?
Right.
So they were a victim of what? It sounds like the alderman made some promises regarding their neighbors and how, because they're right next to a theater,
Okay.
like a big music hall, right? And then there was a big Sears that was there that's going to be converted into new ownership. And I think the idea was, hey, this is the original Six Corners. There's a lot of Six Corners in the city, but the original Six Corners is where they are. Like, I don't know, like Milwaukee and Cicero and like
Pulaski,
and
right?
Something like that. Oh, but then nothing else developed around the new Fishman's.
Yeah.
And sometimes it works the other way, where a brewery or a bar or restaurant will be the catalyst that revitalizes the neighborhood, but they're a victim of their own success, and then the brewery's priced out.
Yeah.
When the lease comes up, they're like, oh, we're kicked to the curb because we're a victim of our own success.
Yeah, Portage Park. That's the neighborhood. Yeah. So, yeah, it sounds like they're gonna have to close.
That sucks.
They're closing, and then, man, there's a really long Facebook post about it, and they put up their home for 16 years as collateral for this loan.
Oh, they put their business straight up on the
Like,
street.
they were all in.
I didn't read it. I saw Mike Zoller
They were
share
all
it
in.
on
Irving
Instagram.
Park, Cicero, Milwaukee. That's Six Corners, the original Six Corners in the city. Yeah. One of the first times we ever had video at a location was at the old Fishman's down the street. They would do a series called Tap This, and it was a Chicago tap takeover, and it's the closest thing we've ever gotten to an all Chicago bar, right? And that happened at Fishman's. So yeah, this was pre Beer Temple. This was pre Pipeworks, pre Off Color. Just the Northwest Side as an anchor. I think you had Fishman's, Capone's, and then you start to see these other dots fill in around that. But they were there forever. So that's kind of sad to see. Family-owned business. Yeah, and it sounds like they're gonna have to peace out. I think the first location, I think one of their family members was renting it to them, and then their family member overnight just kind of like doubled, maybe even tripled their rent, and they're like, "Fuck you." And then the alderman said, "Don't go to another location, a neighborhood. Stay in this neighborhood, and just move to Six Corners." So they did that, and then it didn't work out. So
There's a lot of moving pieces, and some of the pieces that you expected to be moving don't move. Then you're like, whoa, we're exposed. They were very honest about. Anyway,
but that was cool. I respect that a lot, man. Because like if we're ever gonna get better as a city about these kind of things, like that should be the example.
Yeah.
Yeah, get out there and support them. Go in there and have a beer and say, oh, you know what? Watch a little bowl game, even if you're not a bowl game. Be like, oh, have 2 beers and watch a bowl game Saturday afternoon at some local bar or brewery or whatever.
Yeah, if I do this work, I'll roll by Fishman's, and you'll see like the microphone brewing van hanging outside.
Nice.
You'll see Gus behind the bar pouring, and he's got a regular who's like opening up some beer from California for him. It was that kind of spot. But it was really on a short list of like really cool spots to be at if you're really into beer. Yeah. So
The interesting thing is what will be going forward in 2020.
What could happen? Yeah, we saw.
Think it's going to slow down? You think we'll see some closures? And
I think I'm worried these bars will continue as, like you say, you gotta go out and support these places. But people want these new beers that they don't get, and you can get them at the brew or the tap rooms, and so the bars, I think.
There's a certain amount of patience that any evolution is going to take, where years ago when the number 2020 came up, there were parts of the Northwest, 30, 40, sometimes 50% of the beer up in maybe Bend, Oregon might have been craft beer. So, but you got all these Chicago meat and potato kind of people that are attached to the macro brands.
you got corporate contracts too, man.
You got to get away from that. You got to somehow take into that pile, and it's not that easy. So I think that there's going to probably see some closures next year. I think
Right.
Miller Global Headquarters is downtown Chicago. St. Louis is where Anheuser-Busch has a huge foothold. It's macro runs in our veins here.
Well, there's less, we have a Bach, couple, and what's the other one here? what's this one? The
Schwarzbier.
Schwarzbier, but no one can compete with those like the Miller Lite and the Coors Light, and it's like, why try?
Well, you know
but
what?
you gotta have those
watching
things.
this, ask their beer buyer at their local bar to ask for getting in Hotel Life. That's a beer for us that we understand. We have an 18% stout. I mean, that's. But there's going to be a lot of people that aren't going to be able to handle it. I mean, if you guys remember, what was it, Arrogant Bastard? If anybody's got a chance to actually read that You're Not Worthy, put the but that was like a 7 or 9, whatever the percentage is. So not
silly
huge
now, yeah.
But it does thin the herd. I mean, if you're not ready and you start drinking a
but
beer
so
like
you need
that,
to see some of these breweries like do like the Hotel Life or challenge that. Like, you want other beers that maybe aren't High Life but are like it but supports local.
Well, it even gets back to years ago in the early discussion of how important is Blue Moon. Is Blue Moon a good or a bad thing? Well, it's bringing a style of beer that people wouldn't necessarily drink any other way, but they're being presented by the big boys. This is a beer.
Right.
Well, then if you can backfill that with people who are making that locally, but I got to tell you that those guys out of Maine, what's the big one?
Allagash?
Yeah, they still hold tap handles like nobody's business.
Yeah.
I don't know how long they'll be able to do
Allagash
that.
White.
That beer's great.
Yeah.
I went to
It's a great beer. It's
Like,
first beer I got was-
It's like a beer you can rely on. It's
Yeah,
like,
but
all right.
maybe
I'll have that.
and they haven't. I don't think they've lost any of their luster. But there's a day where maybe that wouldn't be the case. Oh, somebody knocks it out of the park who does that locally.
Yeah. In 2020, man, I don't know if like Fishman's quality beer bar. I don't, and there was a huge discussion around beer bars and when brew yards opened up, I think the Hop Police came out and said, "What the fuck are you guys doing? You're pouring your own beer, some bullshit. We need the public in there to curate the experience and all that kind of shit." And you think about Publican and where it was versus where it is now, and you just look at beer bars in general in Chicago. I think I don't know, man, if we can somehow tap into that beer bar ethos of trying a bunch of different stuff, exploring people who make big beers, introducing those people to small beers from the same crew. If you can have those kind of things happen at existing tap rooms, right? Where tap rooms open their doors to maybe do cocktails, maybe do small beers.
That's a funny argument that happened in the last week where that Twitter thing of we don't need Cicerone memorizing styles. It's like, oh yeah, people just want to pour their beer and kind of get drunk. There are a lot of people who just don't care.
I can see both sides.
Well, that's it. There is both sides, and that's why you can't be too hypocritical. Our friend Joe Todd has got these Red Arrow tap rooms in Elmhurst and Naperville, self-serve, whatever. So now he's in the process of franchising that experience with tap fill. But I got to tell you, you don't have to be the biggest beer snob, but if you're shopping in the Rosemont Mall over there, you can fill up a glass of beer and walk around and shop.
Yeah.
And for some people,
that's all you.
And it's craft beer, so I'm like, all right,
I'm in. Where do I sign? Yeah, I mean, people can say what they want, but yeah, if I'm at a spot where I can shop and fucking pour my own beer, and then if you're at a Tapster or whatever the fuck that place is called, and you want 2 ounces of a beer, and you got 5 or 6 different cups you can pick from.
And you don't want to
fancy cups.
And you don't want to seem like a jerk at a bar. Can I try that? Can I try that? Can I try that?
Come on. I'll pay $2 for that. You judge me.
Regardless of how you feel about it, pouring your own beer makes a lot of sense. And if we're gonna survive as a beer town,
that part of the beer experience, some people I'm more of a let's go to the bar and drink great beer as opposed to let's always break down, oh, I like this smell and I like that, and let's just drink beer and hang out.
Yeah.
Let's just have the best choice of the localist beers. Actually, Joe was one of the guys, he goes, Chet, he was on the board at the time, he goes, I was thinking about having just Illinois breweries. I go, as a member of the board of the guild, I probably want to only encourage you to have only Illinois breweries. I said, I don't know if that's your answer, though, because there's some great beers from Oregon and California, obviously, every state you can name.
Yeah.
But let's make sure we get the homeboys taken care of pretty well.
I think that's a good thing to push for, but I don't think a lot of people, we said 250 breweries. People don't even know that some of these breweries are in Illinois. It's like, this is an Illinois brewery?
And the guild has a part of our guild. If you go to the Illinois Craft Beer Guild website, you can get a list of all the breweries. There's apps that have it, I think.
Yeah.
Hopster or Hop, what's the name of it? Anyway, you click it and it'll tell you all the breweries within throughout the whole state, the whole country, wherever you want to put your place on the map. But stop in and ask, and don't be intimidated, man. It just let the person present it to you, or go to the local Binny's or the local bottle shop and say, hey, you know what? People have been talking about this. What do I need to know? What's the basic? What's the starting off point?
We used to have people come on that old tour, and they would be like,
That's old tour.
and they would be like, I don't like this. This smells like hot dog water, or this smells like citronella candles, right? And if you're a casual consumer, this is your only reference point. Yeah. And I personally would encourage people, hey man, if you don't like something, explain to somebody why you don't like it, and allow them to explain to you what it should be, and have that dialogue, even if you guys disagree, because that's the only way. How else does this thing grow? Because there is a gap. There is for sure a gap with a casual drinker.
Right.
They don't understand what the fuck's going on, and that's okay.
And a lot of times they're confused because they'll say stuff that, again, me not with the palate, but what the brewer can say is everything you said is absolutely not what the beer is about. But those are the words that you came up with. So it's fair to you that you said, oh, it's this and this. But the reality is that's not what you're tasting. Let's give you the starting off point. Here's a lager. See what you like about this. This is the next step. Oh, you like that? I mean, it's the simplest part. Sometimes we had at church we had the Scottish ale, which was phenomenal, right? People saw it was dark, and right away they were like, "Oh, I'm not gonna like that. It's gonna be too heavy and all this stuff."
Yeah.
It's awesome beer.
Yeah. Even the New England IPAs, getting those people past the I don't want bitter. Here's a New England IPA. No, I don't want IPA.
Smell it. And just start with that. Smell those beers. Yeah. Oh, we gotta get. Do we bring one in?
The rye.
Yeah, we gotta get to that one.
Is that one of the new ones?
Open that.
Yeah. How would you read that so the people?
The
can
all ride. All ride. It's a
That's your
Citra.
best Matthew McConaughey? All right.
Oh, how's that?
Come on.
There we go. It's a Citra Amarillo Centennial. Nice.
Give it a good.
Oh, that's one 8.5. Whew. Kick our ass here.
I mean, these beers you can't even tell.
That's nice.
I love that beer.
That's good. That reminds me of a close to the Founders Red Rye a little bit. If I had to compare it to something like that, that beer for me early on in the days of drinking was one of my favorites.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here, man. My last trip to Hailstorm, June 24th.
Oh.
That was Coconut. That's when Coconut Black came out. Let's see So let's talk about some of these questions that I got this week. We got Josh Noel text. He's like, hey, here's some questions.
So you're gonna spoil what his article's gonna be.
It's in print, though, right? This is audio, so we could do that.
Yeah, we'll hold off dropping this piece until
that's probably gonna roll. If it rolls, it'll roll this week.
And there's an ad wall. I'm probably at my 4th thing.
And also that, a lot of us won't be able to read it because we've already read four Tribune stories.
I'm still getting through his book. We got to step up on that. Somebody's got to sponsor that 99 cents for the next 3 months.
But I thought these were some pretty loaded questions, man. What Chicago brewery most made its mark during the last 10 years? These are all decade questions.
Last 10 years.
Yeah, so 10 years. So that would be 2010, I think. Yeah.
Man.
These are loaded questions.
Tough. I would think Beguile made a huge impact. They brought in that community or the
CSB.
The group there, and you go in there, and it's non-beer people. It's people that live there, and they just like to hang out in their neighborhood. And beers are at Whole Foods. So it's good. I don't know.
Man, it's the closest thing we get. I mean, strength in numbers. The Malt Row, and what was it? What's the one in West Loop, and Chicago Brewing District? When you go to other cities, when you go to Portland, when you go to Denver, and you do one of their tours.
Can you guys talk amongst yourselves?
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing.
You guys talk. I'll come back to it.
When you go to those towns.
Some snacks for you too, by
right on.
Oh, man.
Chet Brett, proper way to close out 2019 with a Chet
those
Brett.
Things.
We got
sponsored by any.
We got snacks and beer.
Right.
That's what we need, man. 2020, I want to see brewery sponsored snacks.
Well, there's those nuts that
Brewhouse Legends.
Yeah, there's
The ones there at the hop review party.
the hop review party. Yeah,
didn't-
I dropped the ball on talking to them, so we don't want to talk about them because they didn't give us any nuts.
Oh, shout out to the hop review, man, because I think we both agreed that Ultra Fresh this year was really cool. You know,
But yeah,
really one of the best moments of the year. But yeah, Beguile.
I think Beguile is my moment, and they made the biggest mark. I think they. It's tough to say. Like I think Half Acre probably maybe made the biggest voice, but Beguile, they're just doing a lot of everyday beers that people want to drink all the time. Like Half Acre's making great beer.
Yeah, they Beguile is the most interesting choice because, and we talk about it all the time, how, you know, when Whole Foods was looking to revamp their beer offerings and put, you know, like 24 taps in each of the new Whole Foods locations, they reached out to Beguile and said, Beguile, can you do a different beer for each one of our new locations on draft exclusively for us? I thought that was interesting. Even places like the Duck Inn, the chef Hickey. Before the Duck Inn, he was at a hotel downtown, and he could have reached out to any brewery, but he tapped Beguile to do a beer with him when he was at that hotel. The Four Seasons. That was the hotel. The name escapes me. It was like it was the Four Seasons. Yeah. So I thought that was interesting. Like Beguile's always been that interesting.
Still talking about Beguile. Kevin's a great guy. The team he has over there. I mean, how awesome is that?
So, Chet, what would be your brewery that made the biggest mark in the decade? I guess Nick's question here.
Wow.
There's it's basically any Chicago brewery, right? Because as they all started celebrating these 10 years here.
Well, and then you look at the whole state, like Matt Potts, you know, what he's done with the Still downstate.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he's in a lot of states. A lot of people know Illinois beer because the Still's gotten their beers out there.
That's true, yeah. There's a lot of people, non-beer people, that either went to school it's Bloomington, right? Or, that knew about that brewery and were like, these are great. This beer is made here, and it got college kids kind of.
And he kills it with the barrel aged, the Dos Fidania. Right? I mean, we're talking about we're talking about stuff up here, but the reality is, the whole state. There's some people that have made a mark. I mean, he's had probably 11 years or 12. I forget how long he's been going at it, but it's
Dos Fidania is great, man.
It's not easy. I mean, you know. Tracy had her challenges with the build out of the deck and still hustling with the Metropolitan.
Yeah.
And Matt downstate built a big. Have you been?
No, I've never been there.
What's downstate, Matt?
Oh my! The Distill production brewery.
Okay.
It's a destination spot. Which talk about 2020. I mean, Sonny and Perry and Eric and the guys over at Moore are putting that megaplex together off of 90 as you head up towards Rockford for Moore.
Oh.
It's an old auto mall.
Huntley.
And, it's in Huntley. And I've been there at varying stages. And those guys do things right. I mean, Perry and Sonny really, I'd met them my first couple of weeks in the beer industry. I'd met them when I was selling beer. They owned a couple of liquor stores in town, and they're really enthusiastic guys. Well, they got bitten, and they wanted more and more and more. And they put their brewery in Villa Park together. And
dude, if you build in the suburbs, if you build it, they will come. That is very real. Yeah, Huntley, man. That's where I volunteered for Toys for Tots last year, and Santa. We met Santa in the South Burbs where the base was. But he said, "Yeah, I started in Huntley this morning. Huntley's the edge of the earth, man. Santa starts there, and then he makes us crawl down to the South Burbs."
You guys got to get your myopic look of Chicago away a little bit and see that there's
a
little bit Chicagoland.
Because I was telling
we joke about not making it to some of these places, but we do travel.
Yeah, and I was coming last time I saw you at Lynx. I came from Lake Forest that day,
You told me
and it was a 90-minute trek. And I saw you, and I saw Hardcore Craft Beer Chris, and I'm like, I get it now, because these things are far apart, man.
And today I called the Audible. I knew I was trying to be here whatever time we talked about, but I was going to see Jay at the Mountain, whatever. But then the thing came up with having to get up to see the crew up at Fishman's before they wrap it up. So I swung by and said hello to Garrett and the guys, the Pipeworks guys that stopped by and made an audible on that. So
Nice.
Pipeworks is another brewery that we're talking about breweries that made their mark.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
now, I would say again, probably for me because my nephew Jimmy is an awesome kid. He's 32, but he's a hardworking guy in New York who doesn't have a lot of extra time. I mean, he's a kid that works 18 hours a day. He's got 2 young kids at home, but he loves his craft beer. So we've shared that. We've shared a lot of stuff in our life, but now he's older and we're sharing all this craft beer stuff. Pipeworks was one of those that he was able to get. I don't know if it was contraband through his liquor, his beer guy through that, but along the way he's been exposed to that. So, and I've always had a great relationship with all those crew over there. They've had some people pass through there. What's Mike's new place down on the south side? Brewing out of Mars, he was on their sales team. It's not doing it justice.
I'm thinking.
He's put his own little pocket of the brewery stuff together,
Oh, cool.
but an offshoot of Pipeworks.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I didn't know that. Yeah, when you think about crews, like this new school of crews that like the logo and branding changes with every single release, and then having I think Pipeworks first year, and they had 46 different
Beers coming
beers
out,
coming
yeah.
out.
It's an art company that has a drinking problem. That's what it comes down to.
That's a good one.
Whereas in our organization, Chris and Jen and the brewers and all the crew have a great situation. Logan brings the beer to you. Sometimes Chris, by default, is now making these new designs and the logos and changing all that. It looks good. It looks good. I'm like, hey, you know what? Not everybody has that Madison Avenue dollar to go get marketing stuff signed off on and whatnot.
Yeah, but a relentless onslaught of different beers all year that
Yeah.
you see, which doesn't surprise you no matter who does it now. Back in 2011 or 12 or whatever, it was a little different. That was a different approach.
It's different, yeah.
And then jumping forward to 2020 again, the monkey in the room or the blunt in the room is, how is, what is it, adult use cannabis is the euphemism they're calling it. So how do you think that'll affect the...
Because Cider Summit is here every year, and that's the first thing they'll tell you is that cider doesn't cannibalize beer. Like people who are drinking more cider, the people are drinking more cider and more beer. They're kind of helping each other grow. Right. And I think that might be true for cannabis too. I don't think you're choosing one or the other. I think they play off each other.
Probably play out. I think some people will decide that they may have a beer at home or two or eat a gummy, and that will be.
And again, it gets where the big organizations have guys that watch numbers. I was a few years ago. We were at the Illinois Beer Distributors Convention or whatever, and we were one of the sponsors of the brewery I was working for. And so the presenter of the keynote speaker was the Bob Peace is to the Brewers Association. He was the head of the NBWA, National Beer Wholesalers Association. And his big rallying cry is we can't let legalized marijuana run through the country because for those dollars, these guys know that every $2, every 30 cents that isn't spent on a macro-based thing that's distributed through their number system, that it's not going to be. Whereas, if you've got a brewery that's selling $10 4-packs at Binny's or the bottle shops or out of your brewery, and some guy buys an ounce of weed for $300 or $400 and is like, you hope they're going to pair that together in the experience. And so for a person who's all about experience, if you understand about responsibility and not drinking and not driving and not smoking and not driving, and you can put together a head together of listening to music or hanging out with your pals, and you make that experience, I'm not going to be the one to try to reel that in. But they're in the business, the big guys, of controlling as much of their dollars because that's what their job is to do, try to keep an eye on the dollars.
I think it'll level out pretty quick. I think people who haven't smoked weed or done that will do it right away. If you haven't been doing it, you probably don't need to do it. So you'll probably be like, all right, that's not for me.
Yeah.
I'll just go back to drinking. I think that's kind of what we saw in Canada even. People are like, All right, well, it's not for everybody, really, because some people
It
do
most
that.
definitely is not for everyone.
Yeah, most people probably couldn't handle doing both like that. And
Yeah.
if you're getting high, you know, you're getting high anyway before this thing
Right,
kicked
you were
off in
already
January.
doing it.
So yeah, there was a guy at there was a Sox Park Beer Fest, and there was a guy pouring from 18th Street, and he had he gave a business card about like he's pairing weed and beer.
Okay.
That was his whole shtick, right? So you're definitely going to see weed and beer dinners in 2019 heavy, or 2020. In 2020, you're going to see that pretty heavy. But I don't think those worlds. All right. So first of all, with the legalization, right? These guys were they were at Revolution's Oktoberfest party. Greenleaf, I want to say their name was. Oh, but anyway, they were a dispensary, and you could take your picture there. And they were saying, I'm like, well, what's the value of me getting a medicinal card, if weed's going to be legal in 3 months? What's the value? And he's like, the value is that, if you have a medicinal card, that the tax rate is different for you. And then most people who have a dispensary are going to sell you their full store, where if you don't have a card and you walk in off the street, you would get like a small percentage of what they really have in stock. So the tax rate is different if you don't have a card. And then, even though it's more available, so it's going to be more expensive. Mm-hmm. I mean, but I think people who smoke are they're doing that regardless. I don't know. I don't know if they cross that much. I mean, like as far as like affecting
the sales
part. I don't know.
To us, in the anecdotal story way, it's not. But the guys who watch those numbers and say, if macro beer's off 0.5%. It's a huge number for those people.
I think it'll affect the macro a little bit versus the craft.
Because everything's pulling off of that. I don't know what Anheuser-Busch's version of White Claw is. Or is it White Claw? I'm not sure.
I think they do it. They
came out with Bud Light Seltzer.
I think that Bud Light Seltzer.
It's not. I don't think it's going to do so well for them.
As much as we talk, as much as they deserve shit talked about them, I mean, they bought like 12 or so craft brands. They're doing seltzer. They figure out a way to stay relevant.
Because they spend a lot of money to
money
make it happen.
But when was the last Blue Point you had in Chicago?
Yeah, outside of the launch.
That was a couple of years. Actually,
it was a fun launch outside of that, yeah.
John Tomasetti, my buddy, was joining. He was bringing Blue Point into the Bud portfolio in Chicago with Lakeshore Beverage. Now all of a sudden they can't support it.
They kind of came and went. Toasted Lager was one. There was
Oyster being from New York and from Long Island, that was the brewery. Optical Illusion. And they had a blueberry beer that people liked. They make great beers, but where is their market share inside of an exploding Illinois craft beer market?
Yeah.
It's just tough to hold on to. And we get back even to with the Ballast Point, 4.5, whatever that number, wherever they were when they got bought, that number was based on the fact that they had that Sculpin beer that was the grapefruit one that was all these other.
It was
breweries.
good at the
It was
time.
a precursor to what Haze
Yes, that's what I've been saying.
Before ciders kicked off, before seltzers kicked off.
It was before everyone was putting the fruit in beer,
it was
too.
the precursor to
and they
that.
had all that down, and then, the combination of death by 1,000 cuts with everybody going after it, and then losing the panache of being a craft brewery per se,
The panache fell out. That's really where Constellation Brands fucked up. The panache fell out before they could
We
profit.
lost the panache.
It's true, man. Ciders blew up. Haze blew up. Pastry stouts. All these things
and
blew
more
up.
local, hyper-local.
And hyper-local. And then all of a sudden, flavor sculpins were done. It was done. Before it happened, it was done.
And with the mobile canning, some of our friends who have these, which ultimately I thought would have been content with just being a local brew pub, are now packaging their beers and they're getting them into the market and they're selling them on the shelf side by side with everybody else. And that's a whole different group of people than the people that invested in the whole production brewery side of it and the whole systems ago. But
moving the cans was huge this decade.
Yeah.
Because it was Oscar Blues primarily, and people were like, "You guys are fucking nuts, and you're dumbing it down, and you are shame on you for putting this delicious beverage in a can, right?"
That Heady Topper was in cans.
And
I
then
was like,
Heady Topper, then
all right.
But there was an issue. So I'd been at Church Street at the time and proudly serving German traditional beers in a 12-ounce bottle. It was proper for the style and whatever. The migration to cans was being pushed, but there were still a lot of places where 80% of the stuff that was on the shelves were bottles. So even though the hardcore far side of craft had all migrated over to cans, there was still the shelf space that was bottles were still, and this is a few years ago still,
Yeah.
that those were the ones still holding the
Space.
SKUs at the spots, but eventually that all got shaved away, and pretty much now everybody's comfortable with the idea that if you're going to have a can of beer,
They can stack them and have a few more on that shelf.
lighter, easy to move.
Nice. All right. Well, our battery is dead, so we should wrap this up. We are over an hour.
Nice.
Save the questions for Josh Knoll's article.
All right, yeah. Those were interesting questions. So,
Yeah. So what's Hailstorm got coming up, or anything coming out in 2020?
It's exciting. I should have been more versed on what we got going on.
Well, all the barrel,
you know,
barrel
there
aged
was-
stuff just came out.
Yeah, so we had 11 out of 12 weeks where we're releasing another barrel aged beer. So, you know, you were humming along pretty good to end the year. January, February, and March, just in general, the beer industry takes a little bit of a slow time to get back from. Yeah, it's just service industry anyway. I mean,
Recoup.
people are waiting for their tax returns to come back and. Spring,
dry
people don't wanna
January
be-
people.
Yeah, dry January people. But you get St. Patrick's Day; it's hard to hold back that crowd. You're like, oh yeah, I've been
Let's
being
go.
all year, but getting back, ask for it. Ask for Hailstorm. Ask for whatever. Go to the local spots. Don't be intimidated. Have somebody hold your hand as they're kind of taking you through.
Yeah.
Go to a beer festival. Don't think you have to drink big pours. Just have a little taste of all those other things. When you're bringing over some beer to a party, go a little further than just picking up a 12-pack of something that you see that's easy. Maybe ask the guy, you know what? So instead of $14.99 for a 12-pack of something, you might spend $20 because you're getting 2 4-packs of local beer that have got a little bit more of an interesting
Story.
Benny's one of their top SKUs still is the mix of 6, but it's $1. It's a price point
mark.
that's going to be real sensitive. But for people that get out there and try,
Nice. Cool.
Yeah, shout out to Dominatrix, man. That's that triple IPA.
that's a good beer.
That's a party and a half right there, man.
And
Yeah.
the thing about these great high ABV beers is when you don't even notice it, I kind of try to give people a heads. When I'm sampling, I let them taste it first, and be like, oh, by the way, did you realize it was that? And they're like,
Yeah, that happened with this Juke Nukem at Alarbus. I was like, I have to go. Like, I'm good. Like, I need to eat dinner and go home. Like, I can't have another beer. It snuck up on me. So some of these are so tasty and smooth.
yeah, make comments. Tell us what you think. Because that's the other thing. What other people say about what their important part of their, we're thinking about what our universe is in Chicago, but not that far away. There's people having,
Yeah.
oh, you guys didn't realize this was going on? I'll be like, oh, really?
Well, Nick, this was a good way for us to wrap up a year of Chicago Beer Pass.
Couldn't agree more. It's a fun year. Looking forward to doing it again.
I know. We got some more Beer Pass After Darks coming out. We're going to do some other comparison channel stuff.
That's where you introduce the new co-host.
Beer Pass After Dark. We just drink a lot of beer.
Surprise,
and
surprise.
It's this,
I just
but
can't
more
do this.
beer.
I do my remotely from Mars on Friday afternoon.
Drink along with us. So, yeah, should be a good 2020. Nice. So where can people follow when we're not here?
Right on, man. I'm on Twitter at Nicosio.
And Chet, Hailstorm.
Hailstormbrewing.com and probably track me down through social media and
Okay.
say, Chet, you know what? I really want to talk to you about getting that, blah, blah, blah.
You're an easy person to spot in real life, too.
Yeah.
He's only like 6'10" in real life, right? Like,
Yeah.
And I'm B-Rad on Twitter, Chicago Beer Pass, Chicago Beer Pass. And yeah, we might be back next week with, this episode come out, Beer Pass of Dark, and then normal flow, probably
Right.
into January.
Chet Brett.
Cheers, everybody. Happy holidays and season's greetings into 2020.
Cheers.
A pleasure,
The
sir.
best.
Cheers.